In a show like Family Guy, where there is a talking dog, a baby brainiac, and an idiot man-child,
and Meg,
someone like Joe Swanson could be easily overlooked, but I see you, Joe, and I think you're a really underrated character. So, in this video, I'll be covering the police officer's entire life, meeting his wife, and how he ended up in a wheelchair. Hi, I'm Lydia from Screen Portal, and this is the complete timeline of Joe Swanson.
Let's do it! Rock that world! Rock that world!
But first of all, I want to ask you guys a very quick favor. A huge chunk of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, so I'd really appreciate it if you tap that subscribe button. It really helps out the channel, it takes a fraction of a second, and it costs you absolutely nothing. So thank you. Anyway, let's get back to the video. Joe being a family guy too. Before his move to Spooner Street, Joe Swanson was a cop out of town. It was on the job where he met Bonnie, his future wife, who was working as a stripper when the police burst into her club. Joe was instantly taken with Bonnie, but that might have something to do with her giving him a lap dance while in handcuffs. They got married and even had a son by the time they moved to Spooner Street. But Kevin's absence caused a lot of sadness in their relationship when it was revealed that he had joined the army and was missing in action. Or so they thought, more on that a bit later on. Injured on the job. For the vast majority of Joe's time on the show, he has been confined to a wheelchair. But that hasn't always been the case. Joe was actually injured on the job and paralyzed from the waist down. The original story Joe gave was that he was injured on Christmas chasing the Grinch. But the reality was much less whimsical. It turned out that he was actually shot while undercover. Joe was investigating a heroin dealer named Bobby Briggs. The accident left Joe paralyzed and bloody Bobby Briggs scarpered. Many years later, Peter and Quagmire helped Joe track Bobby down, and he would finally get revenge by shooting him right in the kneecaps, killing him as a result.
Just kick him into Mexico.
Moving to Quahog. Family Guy is set in the fictional Rhode Island community of Quahog, and like Springfield or Stool Bend, this place is a magnet for ridiculous people in ridiculous situations. Joe, Bonnie, and Kevin made their debut partway through season 1. And their lives were to change forever, and at least 90% of the ways their lives did change was all down to Peter Griffin. And that guy is just the worst.
Look at you, you look like a half-empty toothpaste.
Being friends with Peter Griffin is a lot of hard work, as is being his child, wife, neighbor, co-worker, or just within a 10-foot radius of him. But no one knows it better than Joe Swanson. While Peter has treated Joe shabbily on a number of occasions, nothing will ever top the restaurant incident. The Griffins decided to run a restaurant, only to be overwhelmed by Joe and his wheelchair-bound friends.
What are all these parallelograms doing here?
You mean paraplegics?
Resulting in Peter banning wheelchairs from the restaurant. This brewing confrontation bubbled over in epic proportions. Joe and his mate staged an assault on the restaurant that the Griffins had to defend. Their reconciliation was a sign of how patient Joe is with his neighbor and supposed friend. When the series first started, Joe was introduced as the hero next door. He was the life of the party and everyone just loved him. But as the series has gone on, the show's jokes have heavily relied more on his disability. He is often treated as a subhuman as a result by the people around him.
I'm a father!
You're a two-wheeled monster!
And despite his so-called friends bagging on him, he is the toughest and bravest of the group, despite being wheelchair-bound. He is also quite funny, and his jokes are really understated, which is something even Peter has complimented him on.
I know I crap on you a lot, but sometimes when I'm driving, I think about stuff you say and I laugh.
Joe walks again. Even after his accident, there have been times where Joe regained his ability to walk, but it never lasted too long.
It's a miracle!
Sorry, Dad.
Just get the chair.
But there was another time when his ability to walk came back in full force. Frustrated by his inability to dance with Bonnie, Joe got an experimental leg transplant.
I put his old legs in a bag if you want them.
Oh, great. You know what? We'll take him home. We'll give him to Brian.
While this allowed him to walk, it also turned him into one arrogant douchebag. He acted all high and mighty above his friends and family, and so led Bonnie to attempt to re-paralyze him. But being a terrible shot, it didn't work, and so Joe had to shoot himself, paralyzing himself below the waist once again.
And once our injuries heal up, we can all go for a nice long walk.
Yeah!
Wait a minute.
Suzie Swanson finally arrives. Bonnie being pregnant for a ridiculously long amount of time somewhat became a running gag of the series.
Okay, first of all, Bonnie, you've been pregnant for like 6 years, all right? Either have the baby or don't.
Suzie Swanson made her big debut on the series after approximately 116 episodes. Oh yeah, and Suzie has the voice for Patrick Stewart.
This is Patrick Stewart. How are you liking the program so far?
Joe and Bonnie's marital issues. Caring for someone with any kind of disability can be challenging even for the strongest individual, and certainly that is the case for Bonnie and Joe. Despite being pregnant for what seemed like forever, Bonnie took care of Joe, lost a son to the war in Iraq, and eventually had a newborn baby to take care of. So it's no surprise that she was under a whole lot of stress. The two of them don't seem to have the happiest marriage.
Hey, Bonnie, what's a 5-letter word for marriage?
Fraud.
It's got to start with a U.
She sees Joe as a constant burden and seems constantly disinterested in whatever he has to say. And she's tried to leave Joe on a multiple of occasions. On a girls' trip to Paris with Lois, Bonnie planned on having an affair, only to be wooed back into the arms of Joe. She also scarpered to Europe when Joe became fully paralyzed.
I'm leaving Joe and moving to Europe. I didn't sign up for this.
During the present day in the show, Bonnie straight out hates her husband, and her way of relieving stress is at a target range, shooting at handicapped targets. She looked into buying a house that would have killed him.
I'll take it.
And when she got a text believing Joe had killed himself, she immediately set fire to the house and walked away with a big old grin. Bonnie also admitted to having a series of affairs with men she met on the internet.
You had an affair? Mm-hmm. It wasn't anything sordid, just some guys I met on the internet.
The worst of all may have been her affair of the heart with Brian Griffin. They bonded over their respective lifetimes of missed opportunities and shared a passionate kiss. More than a tryst, this was very real and a real emotional connection. The two actually planned to run away to start a new life together, but Joe would soon track them down, all thanks to a computer chip in Brian's ear. He makes up with Bonnie and shoots Brian in the kneecap. But do not be fooled into thinking that Joe has been entirely faithful. In the season 10 episode Internal Affairs, Joe sleeps with his colleague after feeling neglected by his wife. Bonnie finds out and the two split up, all before he wins her back with a sexy lap dance, playing homage to their sweet, sweet meet-cute. So yeah, I guess you could say that their relationship is far more dysfunctional than even Lois's and Peter's. And that's really saying something.
I haven't been attracted to Lois for a year and a half.
Kevin comes back. When Joe and Bonnie first arrive into Quahog, they were accompanied by their teenage son Kevin. But it turns out we need to talk about Kevin, as his story took a tragic turn.
Hey, whatever happened to your son, Kevin?
You died in Iraq.
Sad.
Years later, this was disproved. It turned out that Kevin had gone AWOL after deciding that America's actions in the Middle East were very immoral.
I was never in any coma, okay? I bailed. I faked my death and went AWOL.
This enraged Joe to the point where he almost arrested his own son, but Kevin reminded his father of the time he let a homeless man get away with stealing a can of tomato soup to feed his hungry family.
There's right, there's wrong, and somewhere in between, there's life.
And although Joe doesn't agree with Kevin's choice to go AWOL, he realizes that a man's got to do what he thinks is right, and the two of them finally make up.
That man's an imposter. I'm the real Kevin Swanson.
Guys, I don't think we have time for this.
Joe's relationship with his own father. From one father-son relationship to the next, Joe's dad has a hatred for handicapped people and would always make fun of people in wheelchairs. Not knowing this, Peter invited him to Quahog for Father's Day, but when Joe revealed that they had not spoken in years, he and Peter switched lives so his father wouldn't find out the truth. Joe's dad falls for the ruse and thinks that Peter is Joe, but in typical Peter fashion, Peter starts to join in on the mocking of Joe in his chair. Fed up and annoyed, Joe beats up Peter before finally revealing the truth to his father.
Yes, Dad. It's me.
His dad then admits that his deep-rooted stigma comes from his fear of seeing himself or his loved ones confined to a chair, and so the two reconnect.
I love you, son.
I love you too, Dad.
Joe Swanson in the future. In Stu and Stewie's excellent adventure, we see what life is like in the future for the residents of Spooner Street. The much older drunken clan buddies now live together in a retirement home, and Joe even has some shiny new pair of legs.
Who wears short shorts? I wear short shorts!
In the season 10 episode Back to the Pilot, we get another glimpse into the future. When Brian and Stewie travel forward in time, Joe has gotten an upgrade and transformed into a cyborg. And so that completes the Joe Swanson timeline. Joe has done so many things throughout the 20 seasons, and this was really just a brief overview of some of them. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.